Then there's the contract situation of Brandon Aiyuk. Remember yesterday? I don't know if do we have that Instagram story post? 5 emojis, money, and then the talking emoji, the bull emoji, the poop emoji, and the walking emoji.
Brandon Aiyuk has easily become one of the best players on one of the best teams in the entire NFL. His emergence from project wide receiver in the draft to bona fide stud is one of the main reasons why the 49ers found themselves in the Super Bowl last year and had an electric offense all year. But like everything in life, money is always a part of the equation. Brandon Aiyuk has 1 year left on his rookie deal and is set to become an unrestricted free agent after the 2024 season, which means that he is very much due for an extension. And after putting up back-to-back dominant seasons for the 49ers, he feels, rightfully so, that he should be paid accordingly. Now, the problem for the 49ers is that they do not have top wide receiver money at this point. They barely managed to get under the 2024 cap, and by the looks of it, they're going to be about negative $27 million in the red for 2025. So naturally, because of this, a lot of people have speculated that Brandon Aiyuk could be on the trade block. And while 49ers GM John Lynch has publicly stated that they're not actively shopping Brandon Aiyuk, Aiyuk hasn't exactly quieted the noise by some very cryptic posts on social media. But the main question is, how much would Brandon Aiyuk want for an extension? And who would be willing to both acquire and pay him? Before I answer the latter, let me go ahead and look at some of the top wide receiver contracts in the NFL to gauge what a potential Brandon Aiyuk extension would look like. So looking at the top 5 paid wide receivers in total value, you have Devontae Adams, who signed a 5-year, $140 million contract, Tyreek Hill, 4 years, $120 million, Amari Cooper, 5 years, $100 million, A.J. Brown's at 4 with 4 years for $100 million, and then Stephon Diggs clocks in at number 5 with 4 years, $96 million. Now, the last 3 that I just mentioned were 25, 24, and 24 when they signed those extensions. Brandon Aiyuk, as of right now, is 26. So he lines up pretty much exactly age-wise with the rest of these guys. Now, do I think that Brandon Aiyuk is as good as A.J. Brown or prime Stephon Diggs? Probably not. He's probably a half tick below those guys. But when you adjust for NFL inflation, I would imagine that he gets a similar, if not better, contract than those bottom 3 guys. I would imagine that Brandon Aiyuk is looking for well north of $20 million a year. And honestly, my estimate is that he's probably looking for something in the ballpark of 4 years, $96 million, maybe 5 years, $120 million if he really gets a good agent. But I would imagine that his AAV is about $24, $25 million a season. And that is probably not feasible for the 49ers. I mean, they're paying Nick Bosa. Brock Purdy is not going to cost $1 million forever. They have other guys on their team that they're going to pay. So they're going to have to get real creative if they're going to find a way to keep Brandon Aiyuk. Now, to answer the second part of the question, who would trade for, and by definition, extend Brandon Aiyuk? Because we know those things are a package deal with players like this. First of all, the team would need help at wide receiver. Duh. Second of all, they would need assets, probably in this draft, to make a move. And then number 3, arguably most important, they would need money in 2025 and beyond to be able to fit his extension on the books. Now, when you're looking at the 31 other potential teams, I think there's a few that you can cross off the list right away. Obviously, the 49ers are not trading him within division, so that eliminates the Cardinals, Rams, and Seahawks. And I will also throw the Chiefs in there. They are not going to trade one of their best players to the team that just beat them in the Super Bowl. Absolutely not. I think a lot of teams are going to have a no-trade rule with the Chiefs, if I'm being honest. But there are some other likely teams that make sense, and I'm going to break those down into 2 different tiers for you guys. The first tier is teams that I could see, they make sense, but there is one glaring hole as to why I don't think it will totally work. The second tier is teams that make a good amount of sense and are probably the most likely. And the third tier is the 3 teams that I think are the most likely to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. Starting off with some teams that could do it, we got the Packers, who are young at wide receiver and could use a stud for Jordan Love. The Lions, who I think need help at receiver behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Giants, who have no receivers. The Patriots, who have no receivers. The Commanders, the Jets, the Broncos, and the Raiders. Now, for one reason or another, this just doesn't make complete sense to me. Like, for example, the Jets don't have a lot of money in 2025. And to make another example, a team like the Lions, Jared Goff's contract is expiring soon, and I'm sure they're going to try to re-sign him, so they're going to be a little tight financially. Moving on to two more teams that I think make more sense would be the Texans and the Jaguars. Now, the Texans are building something really, really special there in Houston, and obviously DeMeco Ryans, having worked with Brandon Aiyuk in San Francisco, I think that would be a nice connection to bring over to Houston. There's some familiarity there. The Texans are well set up. They have cheap, young players. They have a prime opportunity to bring somebody like Brandon Aiyuk into this team. Now, one thing with the Texans is that they already have two really solid wide receivers. I don't think either are the caliber of Brandon Aiyuk, but you would be hard-pressed to say that top-end receiver is a need for the Texans, I would say. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars as well. They lost Calvin Ridley. Christian Kirk, he is fine, but he is nowhere near a wide receiver one, I don't think. And you want to keep providing a stable offense for Trevor Lawrence to prove that he is, the golden boy that he was said to be in the draft. Problem with the Jaguars is that his extension's coming up and Josh Allen's is coming up. So they might be a little strapped for cash, but, there's always some ways that you can finagle an extension to make the cap work in your favor if you really want to be honest. But I think the three teams that make the most sense for Brandon Aiyuk would be the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Carolina Panthers, and the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the Steelers don't really have a good wide receiver on the roster, not named George Pickens. They traded away Deontay Johnson. I would definitely imagine that they are in the market to take a receiver either at pick 20 or to try to find one via a trade. Now, they're kind of going with a quarterback experiment this year, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and they're not giving them much to work with, in my opinion. So bringing in a guy like Brandon Aiyuk would give you an honest evaluation of both quarterbacks, honestly, and really help your offense compete in the AFC North. They have a decent amount of money for 2025 and beyond, and Brandon Aiyuk, even on social media, has hinted at the fact of him going to Pittsburgh. And their draft picks, I don't know if they would want to do pick 20 straight up for Brandon Aiyuk, but if they were in desperate enough mode and they thought Brandon Aiyuk was a player that they really, really wanted to bring in, you could definitely see pick 20 going to San Francisco for Brandon Aiyuk. Next team would be the Carolina Panthers. I think their number one goal has to be to help Bryce Young. I mean, last year was just abysmal. They spent a boatload of money in free agency, hopefully shoring up the interior of the offensive line. They traded for Deontay Johnson, which that's a good start. But Deontay Johnson, I don't think is a solid wide receiver one. I think he's a good complementary piece. Bring in a guy like Brandon Aiyuk, whose main attribute is his separation ability. I think that will really, really help Bryce Young. And Dave Canales will have his Mike Evans, quote unquote. He'll have his dominant wide receiver one. The Panthers, they don't have their first round pick, which not that they would give the 49ers pick 1 for Brandon Aiyuk anyways. They do have pick 33, which I think is right in the range of where the San Francisco 49ers would want. I think the Panthers should and would be willing to give up pick 33 for Brandon Aiyuk. And since they're not really paying anybody because they don't have any good players, really, they have money to sign Brandon Aiyuk and give him the contract that he wants. I think that Carolina makes a lot of sense for Brandon Aiyuk. And then lastly, we have the Indianapolis Colts. And this essentially just boils down to the fact that they want to surround Anthony Richardson with as much talent as possible. I understand that they have Michael Pittman coming back. I get it. But Brandon Aiyuk, to me, is such a complementary piece to Michael Pittman, whereas Michael Pittman is more of a possession receiver, big body, kind of go-get-it guy. Brandon Aiyuk is a separator. He's going to get open. He's going to cook man coverage. And I think that having those two guys on the outside for Anthony Richardson is just going to unlock a whole new level of offense. Let's be honest with ourselves. Alec Pierce really ain't it. So I think the Colts could give Brandon Aiyuk the extension that he wants. The pick 15 would probably be a bit rich, but you could always do some sort of pick swap in Brandon Aiyuk or something like that. So that is my video on Brandon Aiyuk. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Where will Brandon Aiyuk be traded? Will he be traded? Or will the 49ers figure out a way to extend him? I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.